The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council loomed vast and cold. Tall windows showed the stars beyond, the same stars that had witnessed countless species rise and fall. And now, they watched as humanity made its final plea. James Miller stood alone at the center of the room. His simple gray suit looked plain next to the elaborate dress of the alien representatives. He was tired. 3 days of talks had led nowhere. The council members sat high above him on curved benches, looking down with eyes, sensor arrays, and other organs that Miller had learned to read as dismissive. "The terms remain unchanged," announced Elder Drem of the Vex. His voice echoed through translation devices across the chamber. "Humanity will continue to pay the established tariffs on all space lanes. The mining rights to your outer colonies will remain under Meridian oversight." Miller took a deep breath. "These terms have crippled Earth's economy for 30 years. We've submitted proof that they violate the Fair Trade Acts of your own charter." Laughter rippled through the chamber, a strange mix of sounds from different species. A Solari representative waved her long golden limbs. "Your species has existed in space for barely a century. The charter was written by those who built this civilization over millennia." "That doesn't make it right," Miller said. His voice remained steady, but his hands gripped the podium tightly. "Humanity requests equal treatment under galactic law. Nothing more, nothing less." Elder Drem's scaled skin shifted colors in what Miller had learned indicated impatience. "Perhaps in another century, your application for revised status might be considered. Until then, you remain under protective oversight." "Protective?" Miller couldn't hide his frustration now. "Your corporations strip our colonies of resources. Your military vessels control our shipping lanes. What exactly are you protecting us from except fair treatment?" A Meridian admiral named Lorne leaned forward. Unlike the others, his expression seemed troubled. "The Council protects the galaxy from chaos. New species must be guided firmly." Miller looked around the room. 57 species represented, but only 3 held real power. The others sat quietly, avoiding his eyes. They had once stood where humanity stood now. "We've tried to work within your system for 3 decades, Miller said. "We've followed every rule, filled every form, paid every fee. And still, we are dismissed." "Because you are young," Elder Drem said. "Young species are impulsive, dangerous. Your own planet's history proves this." The oversight continues. Miller stood silent for a long moment. The council members shifted uncomfortably. They had expected more pleading, more desperate negotiations. Instead, Miller pressed a small button on his wrist device. "Very well. This is humanity's final communication to the Galactic Council." His voice had changed, taking on a formal tone that made even the eldest members pay attention. "Earth and all human colonies hereby withdraw from all galactic treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic relations. We will no longer recognize Council authority over human space." The chamber erupted in sounds of shock and disbelief. Elder Drem rose from his seat, towering to his full height. "This is not permitted. No species can simply leave." "We just did," Miller replied calmly. "We came to you as equals. You chose to see us as lesser. We will not return to this table." Admiral Lorne moved quickly to the center platform. "Ambassador Miller, reconsider. There are protocols, procedures. A withdrawal without council approval will make Earth a rogue state. Trade sanctions will be automatic. Your colonies will suffer." Miller looked at him directly. "Perhaps, but we calculated that risk. We've suffered enough under your protection." Elder Drem's voice boomed through the chamber. "This display is meaningless. You have no leverage, no power to enforce such a decision. Return to your position, and we may overlook this emotional outburst." Miller was already walking toward the exit. He stopped at the massive doors and turned one last time to face the council. "Humans have a saying. Those who make peaceful change impossible make other changes inevitable. Remember that in the coming months." The doors closed behind him with a final, heavy sound. In the chamber, Laughter soon replaced shock. The Vex, Meridians, and Solari reassured each other that this was simply human dramatics. They would return, humbled and ready to accept their place. Only Admiral Lorne remained troubled. He had studied human history. Unlike his colleagues, he understood what happened when humans decided they had nothing left to lose. 3 weeks after Ambassador Miller's departure, the Galactic Council still treated the human withdrawal as a minor inconvenience. Elder Drem sat in his private chamber, discussing the matter with Admiral Lorne and High Merchant Tella of the Solari. The humans have already broken 2 trade contracts, Tella said, her golden skin shimmering with annoyance. They've recalled their ships from joint mining operations in the Outer Rim. Let them sulk, Elder Drem replied, sipping from a glass of rare Vex nectar. They will return when their economy feels the squeeze. No single species can survive without the galactic market. Admiral Lorne looked out at the massive space station that housed the Council. Hundreds of ships moved through carefully controlled lanes. I'm not so sure. My intelligence reports show unusual activity in human space. What kind of activity? Asked Tella. Nothing alarming, yet concerning. They've pulled back 90% of their merchant fleet. Their colonies are increasing food production and stockpiling materials. It appears systematic. Elder Drem waved a dismissive hand. Humans are dramatic by nature. They wish us to notice their tantrum. The door slid open, and a young Vex aide rushed in. Elders, forgive the interruption. The humans have just made a system-wide announcement across all Council territories. The large screen on the wall activated. Ambassador Miller's face appeared, calm and resolved. To all species of the galaxy, I speak as the final representative of Earth to the Galactic Council. As of today, humanity formally ends its participation in all Council activities. We have sealed our borders according to the ancient rite of separation, recognized even in the oldest Council texts. Elder Drem stood up suddenly. The ancient rite. That hasn't been invoked in 3,000 years. On screen, Miller continued, to our friends among the stars, know that humanity bears no ill will toward any species. Private trade with non-council entities remains welcome through our new border stations. To those who have treated us fairly, our friendship continues. To those who have not. He paused, his eyes seeming to look directly at the Vex, Meridians, and Solari. We will meet again under different circumstances. The screen went dark. Immediately, reports flooded in. Human ships everywhere were jumping to light speed, heading back to Earth space. Human diplomats had left their posts simultaneously across 50 worlds. Human trading posts were shutting down, with goods already removed. They planned this carefully, Admiral Lorne said quietly. The coordination is impressive. It's meaningless. Elder Drem snapped. The ancient rite of separation requires council approval. This is simply illegal withdrawal. Actually, Lorne corrected, the original text states any species may claim separation if they can demonstrate systematic inequality. The council merely acknowledges the right. It doesn't grant it. High Merchant Tella paced nervously. The bigger concern is practical. Humans run 30% of shipping in the Orion Arm. They manage dozens of refueling stations. This disruption will cause significant problems. Problems we can solve. Elder Drem insisted. We controlled the galaxy long before humans emerged from their planet. We will manage without them. A month passed. Then, too, the Council authorized sanctions against human territory, but enforcement proved difficult. Human space was vast and spread across multiple spiral arms of the galaxy. More troubling, several smaller species began dealing directly with humans, ignoring the sanctions. In a private council meeting, Admiral Lorne presented his concerns. The human withdrawal is having unexpected effects. 10 smaller species have now filed their own petitions for revised status. Elder Drem's scales darkened with anger. Deny them all. We cannot show weakness. There's more, Lorne continued. Our intelligence assets in human space have gone silent. We have no information about what they're doing behind their borders. They're hiding because they're suffering, High Merchant Tella said with confidence. Their economy must be collapsing without our markets. Admiral Lorne wasn't convinced. I've studied human history extensively. When they go quiet like this, they're usually building something. What could they possibly build that would concern us? Elder Drem laughed. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their military consists of retrofitted cargo ships and outdated weapons. Lorne looked troubled. I hope you're right. But consider this. In every major conflict in human history, their opponents consistently underestimated their resourcefulness until it was too late. Elder Drem dismissed the meeting, confident in the Council's power. But that night, looking out at the stars, Admiral Lorne couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The galaxy had fallen into an uncomfortable silence, like the calm before a storm. 6 months into humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. The Great Chamber was filled with tension as representatives from dozens of species gathered. Many seats remained empty. Minor species had stopped attending, claiming internal matters required their attention at home. High Merchant Tella's golden skin had lost some of its luster. The trade disruptions are worse than predicted. Shipping costs in the Orion Arm have tripled. 4 major distribution hubs formerly run by humans have shut down completely. Elder Drem's scales shifted to a dull gray as he addressed the council. These are temporary inconveniences. We've lived for millennia before humans crawled out of their oceans. We will adjust. Will we? Asked Admiral Lorne, stepping forward with a data tablet. My scouts report unusual activity along the borders of human space. The main screen activated, showing grainy images of distant shipyards. Massive structures floated in space, surrounded by swarms of smaller vessels. What are we looking at? Asked one of the minor council members. We don't know exactly, Lorne admitted. These images were taken at extreme range. Our probes can't get closer. They're being detected and disabled. But the energy readings suggest large-scale construction. Elder Drem scoffed. They're probably rebuilding their merchant fleet, hoping to extract better terms when they inevitably return to the council. A nervous Meridian scientist raised her hand. There's something else. Elders, our deep space tracking stations have detected unusual movements in the asteroid belts within human territory. They appear to be moving the asteroids. Moving them where? Tella demanded. Into processing facilities. The scale is unprecedented. Thousands of asteroids redirected simultaneously. Admiral Lorne's expression darkened. Those asteroids contain metals used in shipbuilding and weapons manufacturing. You believe they're preparing for war. Elder Drem laughed, but his laughter sounded hollow even to himself. Against the combined might of the 3 eldest races. Impossible. Not necessarily war, Lorne said carefully, but they're building something and hiding it from us. Meanwhile, deep within human space, the Earth shipyards hummed with activity. The orbital facilities around Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn worked at full capacity. Mining outposts on distant moons extracted resources day and night. In a secure facility orbiting Europa, Captain Alex West stood before a viewing window, watching as workers swarmed over the hull of an enormous vessel. Unlike the utilitarian design of previous human ships, this one featured sleek lines and unusual protrusions that pulsed with blue energy. Director Kate Reed joined him at the window. Beautiful, isn't she? The first Thunderchild-class vessel. 5 more are nearing completion at the other shipyards. Will they work? West asked, his eyes fixed on the massive ship. The theories were sound, but we've never built anything integrating these technologies before. Reed smiled. The test runs exceeded expectations. The quantum displacement drive works perfectly. The Vex thought they were being generous sharing outdated gravity manipulation technology with us. They never imagined we'd combine it with our own research into quantum fields. And the defense systems. Even better. Reed's smile widened. We've successfully reverse-engineered and improved upon Meridian Shield technology. And those energy projectors you're looking at, they can disrupt any known propulsion system without destroying the target vessel." West nodded appreciatively. "Non-lethal, but effective, just as the Admiral ordered." "Speaking of which," Reed said, checking her tablet, "Admiral Wilson wants both of us in the Strategic Command meeting. The first phase is almost ready to launch." As they walked through the busy corridors, West saw determination on every face they passed. Engineers, scientists, soldiers, all working with quiet purpose. There were no grand speeches, no rallying cries. They didn't need them. Everyone remembered the decades of humiliation, of being treated as lesser beings despite humanity's achievements. Back in Council space, a minor diplomatic officer rushed into Admiral Lorne's quarters. "Sir, we've lost contact with our listening post near the Arcturus system." "Equipment failure?" Lorne asked, already suspecting the answer. "No, sir." The post reported unusual energy readings, then went silent. 3 scout ships were dispatched to investigate. The officer hesitated. "They've also disappeared." Lorne stared at the star map on his wall. Red markers indicated all the monitoring stations and scout ships that had gone silent in recent months. The pattern was clear now, a systematic elimination of the Council's eyes and ears around human space. "They're not hiding," Lorne whispered to himself. "They're preparing the battlefield." That night, as the Council continued to debate trade policies and economic sanctions, Admiral Lorne sent a private message to his fleet captains. "Prepare for unexpected contact. The silence will break soon." The first sign of trouble came from a remote Meridian mining outpost near the border of human space. Communication suddenly cut out during a routine transmission. When they resumed 30 minutes later, the station supervisor reported something impossible. All their ships were gone. Not destroyed. Simply gone. The Council dismissed it as a technical malfunction until similar reports came in from 3 more outposts within the same day. Admiral Lorne stood before the Council, his face grim. 7 outposts have now reported the same pattern. The brief power fluctuation, followed by the disappearance of all military vessels. Civilian ships remain untouched. "Piracy," suggested High Merchantella. "Perhaps some criminal organization is taking advantage of the disruption." "Pirates don't disable advanced security systems without leaving a trace," Lorne replied. "And they certainly don't return the crews safely to the outposts after taking the ships." Elder Drem's scales flashed with angry colors. "You believe this is the humans?" "I do," Lorne confirmed. "And there's more." The Solari defense station in the Rigel sector captured this image before going dark. The main screen displayed a blurry image of a ship unlike any they had seen before. Its hull gleamed with a strange blue glow. It was larger than standard human vessels, but moved with impossible grace. "What kind of ship is that?" Tella demanded. "Unknown design," Lorne said. "But the energy signature is definitely human, though far more advanced than anything they've previously fielded." Elder Drem slammed his fist down. "This is outrageous. Direct attacks on Council facilities. We must respond immediately. Prepare the combined fleet." For the first time in 300 years, the combined fleet of the 3 elder races assembled. 500 of the most powerful ships in the galaxy gathered at a staging area near the human border. Their weapons could destroy planets. Their shields had never been breached. As the fleet prepared to jump to their first target, Earth itself, Admiral Lorne received a priority communication. The message carried no identification, but when he played it in his private quarters, Ambassador Miller's face appeared. "Admiral Lorne, by now you've witnessed the first demonstration of our new capabilities. I extend this courtesy because our intelligence suggests you alone tried to warn the Council. What follows is not conquest or revenge, but a necessary rebalancing. The Thunderchild fleet will continue its mission regardless of the combined fleet's movements. I suggest you consider your options carefully." The message ended. Lorne sat in silence, weighing decades of loyalty against his growing conviction that the Council had gravely miscalculated. Meanwhile, Captain Alex West stood on the bridge of the Thunderchild, humanity's new flagship. Through the viewscreen, he watched as the ship's sensors detected the massive energy buildup of the combined fleet preparing to jump. "They're coming for Earth," said his first officer, Lisa Park. West nodded calmly. Just as Admiral Wilson predicted. Initiate Phase 2. Throughout human space, similar commands were given on 5 other Thunderchild-class vessels. The ship's quantum displacement drives activated, creating ripples in spacetime that the Council's sensors couldn't detect. The combined fleet emerged from lightspeed at the coordinates for Earth, weapons charge. But instead of a blue-green planet, they found empty space. "Where is it?" demanded the Vex fleet commander. "Where is Earth?" Sensors showed nothing but distant stars where humanity's home planet should have been. As confusion spread through the fleet, a small object appeared on their scanners, a simple probe, broadcasting a message on all frequencies. Captain West's voice filled the command centers of every Council ship. "Your target is no longer at these coordinates. Earth and all human colonies have been temporarily shifted 5 minutes out of phase with normal spacetime. You cannot detect them. You cannot reach them." Before the Council commanders could respond, their sensors detected new energy signatures appearing throughout their formation. 6 Thunderchild vessels materialized among the tightly packed fleet. "This is not a war," West continued. "This is a demonstration. Your ships are about to experience a targeted quantum displacement field. Your weapons and engines will be disabled. Your crews will be unarmed." Blue energy waves pulsed outward from the human ships. Across the combined fleet, systems failed in cascades. Weapons powered down. Engines died. Even emergency systems flickered and went dark. In his command ship, the Vex fleet commander watched helplessly as a human vessel approached, gliding effortlessly between the now powerless Council ships. "The terms of galactic cooperation," West's voice announced, "are about to change. The negotiation table awaits your return, as equals this time." Panic swept through the Galactic Council chamber. The combined fleet, the mightiest armada ever assembled, hung powerless in space, at the mercy of 6 human vessels that shouldn't exist. Elder Drem's scales had turned ash-gray, a sign of extreme distress among the Vex. How is this possible? Their technology was primitive just months ago. Admiral Lorne studied the reports streaming in from the disabled fleet. They didn't develop all this in a few months. They've been working on these technologies for years, perhaps decades, while pretending to be technologically inferior. "But why?" asked Tella, her golden skin dull with shock. "Why maintain such a deception?" "Because we gave them no choice," Lorne replied quietly. "We treated them as children, denied them access to advanced knowledge. So they studied what little we shared and developed the rest in secret." On the main screen, live footage showed human ships moving methodically through the combined fleet. Rather than destroying the helpless vessels, they were attaching small devices to each ship's hull. "What are they doing now?" Elder Drem demanded. A Meridian technician looked up from his console. The devices appeared to be temporary power sources. They're restoring life support and basic systems, but not weapons or engines. Lorne nodded thoughtfully. "They're ensuring crew survival. This isn't about destruction." "Then what is it about?" Tella snapped. Before anyone could answer, the chamber doors slid open. Ambassador Miller walked in, flanked by 2 officers in the new dark blue uniforms of Earth's Space Force. The Council chamber fell silent. Miller looked exactly as he had the day he walked out, calm, composed, but now with an unmistakable air of authority. "Elders," he said, nodding respectfully, "I've come to discuss the terms of our new relationship." Elder Drem rose to his full height, towering over the human. "You dare to attack our fleet, and then walk in here expecting negotiations. This is an act of war." "No," Miller replied evenly. "This is a demonstration of capability. If we wanted war, your ships would be destroyed, not temporarily disabled. Your crews are safe. Your vessels will be fully functional again within 48 hours. You expect gratitude? Tella asked bitterly. No, High Merchant. I expect attention. Miller activated a small device, projecting a hologram in the center of the chamber. It showed star systems throughout the galaxy with trading routes highlighted between them. For centuries, the elder races have controlled these primary trade routes, charging whatever tariffs you wished. Species who protested found themselves cut off from essential resources. Miller touched the display, and dozens of systems lit up in red. These are colonies where the native species have been displaced by Vex, Meridian, or Solari interests. Most of those species are now extinct or reduced to serving on their own homeworlds. Elder Drem's voice shook with rage. You presume to judge histories that began before your kind discovered fire. We judge actions, not histories, Miller replied. And we've experienced those actions firsthand for 30 years. Meanwhile, in space, Captain West supervised the final phase of the operation from the Thunderchild's bridge. The quantum displacement field had held perfectly, leaving the combined fleet helpless but intact. All crew life signs are stable across the enemy fleet, reported Officer Park. Power restoration modules have been attached to 97% of vessels. West nodded. And our other teams. All reporting success, Captain. The Solari shipyards at Deneb have been neutralized. The Meridian weapons platforms in the Epsilon sector are offline. The Vex communication relays have been reconfigured to our specifications. In one swift, coordinated strike, humanity had disabled the three pillars of Elder race power: their military, their production facilities, and their communication network. Not destroyed, merely paused. Back in the council chamber, Miller continued his presentation, showing evidence of systematic exploitation of younger species throughout the galaxy. Many council members looked away, uncomfortable with seeing their practices documented so thoroughly. Here is what will happen next, Miller said, his voice firm, but not threatening. The current council structure will be dissolved. A new governing body will be formed where representation is based on population and contribution, not age or military power. You cannot simply rewrite galactic law. Elder Drem protested. Miller looked at him steadily. We're not rewriting it. We're enforcing its original principles of fairness and cooperation, principles the elder races themselves wrote but never followed. Admiral Lorne, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. And if we refuse these terms, then humanity will withdraw completely, Miller said, taking our technology and leaving your ships, stations, and networks permanently disabled. The galaxy will have to rebuild without us. The room fell silent as the full implications became clear. The elder races had a choice: adapt to a new reality or face collapse. The negotiation table is set, Miller concluded. This time, we all sit at the same height. The Grand Assembly Hall on the neutral planet of Terzius was unlike the old council chamber. Instead of rising tiers that placed some species physically above others, a circular table dominated the center. Representatives from over 200 worlds sat at equal height, with no special positions marking status or power. Commander Thomas Ray stood at the entrance, surveying the gathering. As the military officer chosen to present humanity's evidence, he felt the weight of his responsibility. The data crystals in his pocket contained centuries of records showing how the elder races had manipulated galactic development. Nervous? Asked Dr. Emma Reed, the scientific advisor accompanying him. Cautious, Ray replied. We hold all the advantages right now, but this isn't about replacing one set of rulers with another. It's harder to build than to break. Inside the hall, species that had never been permitted to speak in council meetings now voiced their grievances openly. The Novan representative, whose people had been reduced to mining labor on their own homeworld, described generations of Solari control. They called it economic assistance. The Novan said, his voice trembling. They left us the scraps from our own resources and called it fair trade. Similar stories came from dozens of worlds. Some species had lost access to their own colonies. Others had been denied technologies that could have saved their people from disease or natural disasters, all because they were deemed too young or not ready by the elder races. Elder Drem sat with the other Vex representatives, his scales a muted blue of resignation. Beside him, High Merchant Tella's golden glow had dimmed to a pale yellow. Only Admiral Lorne seemed composed among the elder race delegations. When Commander Ray was called to present, he walked to the center of the circular table and activated the holographic display. "What I'm about to show you isn't just humanity's experience," he began. "These records span 3,000 years and involve over 70 species. We recovered them from abandoned outposts, purchased them from information brokers, and reconstructed them from fragments. Together, they reveal a pattern of deliberate suppression." The display showed thousands of trade agreements, color-coded to show imbalances, resource extraction rates, population decline charts for species under protection. Most stunning were internal communications between elder race leaders discussing how to keep younger species dependent. "We humans were simply the latest in a long line," Ray continued. "The difference is that we had already experienced similar patterns in our own history. We recognized the signs early and began preparing." Admiral Lorne leaned forward. "You deceived us, pretending technological limitations while developing weapons in secret." "Yes," Ray acknowledged without apology. "Just as you deceived us about the true capabilities of the technologies you shared. The gravity manipulation principles you provided were deliberately flawed. We had to rediscover the correct formulas ourselves." Elder Drem's scales flashed briefly with anger. "And now you will do to us what you claim we did to you. Force unfair terms with your technological advantage." Dr. Reed stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "That's not our intention. The quantum displacement technology that neutralized your fleet isn't classified anymore." She gestured to data tablets being distributed to all representatives. "The complete schematics are being shared with every species in this assembly, including the Vex, Meridians, and Solari." Stunned silence fell over the hall. Giving away such a powerful technology was unheard of. "This isn't about revenge or replacing one set of rulers with another," Commander Ray explained. "It's about balance. No species should control others through technological superiority." A small insectoid representative from the Outer Rim systems rose. "Why would humans share this? You could rule the galaxy with such an advantage." "Because we've read our own history," Ray replied simply. "Empires built on force always fall, usually violently. We're not interested in being the next empire. We want to be part of a fair community." Ambassador Miller, who had been quietly observing from the side, joined Ray at the center. "Here are humanity's proposals for the new galactic structure. All technology sharing will be open and unmodified. Resource rights will belong primarily to native species of each system. Trade routes will be regulated by representatives from all worlds that use them, not just those who built them." He paused, looking directly at the elder race representatives. "And no species, regardless of age or development, will be denied a voice in matters that affect them." Admiral Lorne studied the human representatives thoughtfully. "These terms are unexpectedly reasonable." "They're the same terms we asked for originally," Miller reminded him. "All we've ever wanted was equal treatment." As discussions continued into the night, species that had never dared speak against the elder races now voiced their support for the human proposals. The Meridians were the first to officially accept the new structure, followed reluctantly by the Solari. Only Elder Drem and the Vex delegation remained resistant, clustering together in heated discussion. Finally, Drem approached Miller privately during a recess. "You could have destroyed us," the Vex leader said quietly. "Why didn't you?" Miller's answer was simple: "Because that's not who we want to be." 1 year had passed since the formation of the Galactic Alliance. The old Council headquarters had been transformed into a museum documenting the history of interstellar relations, both the centuries of inequality and the remarkable changes of recent months. Ambassador James Miller walked through the exhibits with Admiral Lorne, who had become an unexpected ally in the transition. The Meridian officer had retired from military service to help implement the new systems. "I never expected to see this in my lifetime," Lorne admitted, pausing before a display showing the first Thunderchild vessel, the old powers yielding to a new balance. Miller smiled slightly. "Change is hard. I'm surprised how well the Meridians adapted." "We're practical," Lorne replied. "Once we saw the direction of the wind, we chose to sail with it rather than against it." They stopped at a window overlooking the spaceport. Ships of every design and origin moved through carefully coordinated patterns. Trade had increased by 40% under the new regulations. With fair access to resources and technologies, dozens of formerly struggling species were now thriving. "The Vex are still resisting in small ways," Lorne noted. "Elder Drem can't quite accept the new reality." "He'll adjust," Miller said confidently. "Or his successors will. The younger Vex already see the benefits of cooperation." In the distance, they could see construction on the new Galactic Alliance headquarters, a structure built by combined teams from 30 different worlds. Unlike the imposing fortress of the old council, this building was open, with gardens and public spaces integrated throughout. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Alex West supervised the conversion of the Thunderchild fleet. The 6 mighty warships were being reconfigured, their displacement technology now used for deep space exploration rather than military applications. "The quantum sensors are calibrated for the Andromeda mission," Officer Park reported, checking the final diagnostics. "We'll be able to map star systems from distances previously impossible." West nodded with satisfaction. "From warships to exploration vessels in less than a year. Not bad." "Some of the crew are disappointed," Park admitted. "They trained for defense, not science missions." "They'll get used to it," West replied. "We all will. Humanity's first act on the galactic stage was to show our strength. Our second, and more important act, is showing our wisdom." In the newly formed education exchange on Earth, thousands of alien students mingled with human learners. Species that had once been restricted from advanced knowledge now studied openly, sharing their own unique perspectives and approaches. Dr. Emma Reed addressed the first graduating class, a diverse group from 73 worlds. "The universe doesn't progress when knowledge is hoarded," she told them. "It advances when ideas collide and combine in unexpected ways." Among the graduates was a young Vex named Trell, whose scales shimmered with the pale green of curiosity, a color rarely seen in Elder Drem's presence. Trell had been among the first Vex to openly support the human proposals. "My elders still struggle to understand what happened," Trell confided to his human friend Mark after the ceremony. "How did humanity accomplish so much so quickly?" Mark shrugged. "We didn't, really. We spent decades preparing, studying, learning from everyone we could. The real change wasn't technological. It was philosophical." "What do you mean?" Trell asked. "The elder races believed power came from what you could keep for yourself. We believe it came from what you could share and build together." Mark grinned. "Turns out we were right." Back in the transformed council chamber, now called the Alliance Assembly, representatives gathered for their quarterly meeting. Unlike the old sessions dominated by elder race speeches, these meetings were lively exchanges where even the smallest worlds contributed. Ambassador Miller took his seat, no higher or more prominent than any other. The Solari representative, a younger member named Rel who had replaced Tella, nodded respectfully to him. "The trade dispute between the Novas and the Hellions has been resolved amicably," announced the session moderator, a representative from a world that had never been permitted to speak in the old council. "Both parties have signed the agreement." Miller watched with quiet satisfaction. This was what humanity had fought for, not dominance, but fairness, not revenge, but reform. As the session continued, news arrived from the edges of explored space. A new species had been discovered, just beginning their journey to the stars. Under the old system, they would have been claimed, controlled, and exploited by whichever elder race reached them first. Now the Assembly voted unanimously to send a diplomatic mission, not to establish control, but to welcome equals. Leading that mission would be representatives from 3 worlds: one human, one Vex, and one from the newly liberated Novan people. The universe had indeed trembled, not from fear or destruction, but from the seismic shift toward justice. As humans like to say, they had not just changed the players at the table, they had changed the game itself.